I used to think that everything that happened to me was random. The good days, the bad breaks, the opportunities that showed up out of nowhere, the people who walked into my life at exactly the right or wrong time. For a long time, I called it luck. Then I called it fate. But somewhere along the way, I started asking a different question. What if the world isn't just happening to us? What if we are quietly shaping what happens? Not in a mystical way, not in a wish it and it appears way, but in something much simpler. What if what we consistently think about, tolerate, expect, and believe slowly becomes the boundary of what we experience? I remember reading about Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who by any standard had everything: power, wealth, authority over an empire. Yet his private journal, which we now call Meditations, reads nothing like the diary of a conqueror. It reads like a man constantly trying to discipline his own mind. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That line used to feel philosophical. Now it feels practical, because when I look back at the hardest seasons of my life, what made them unbearable wasn't the event itself. It was the story I told myself about the event. When I lost a job years ago, I didn't just lose income. I told myself I had failed. I told myself I wasn't capable. I told myself this was proof that I was behind everyone else. The situation lasted months. The story lasted years. And the story shaped my behavior more than the event ever did. That's when I started noticing something uncomfortable. We don't just experience life, we interpret it. And our interpretation becomes the invitation we send to the world. If I believe I am unlucky, I move cautiously. I hesitate. I avoid risks. I notice every setback as confirmation. Over time, that pattern creates results that look like bad luck, but are actually the product of guarded living. If I believe people can't be trusted, I keep distance. I don't open up. I assume the worst. And eventually I create shallow connections that confirm my belief. It's subtle. It doesn't feel like control. It feels like reality. Viktor Frankl once wrote about surviving Auschwitz. In conditions most of us can't even imagine, he observed something extraordinary. Even when everything external was stripped away, there remained one freedom: the freedom to choose one's attitude. Now, let's be honest. Most of us are not facing concentration camps. We are facing emails, deadlines, disappointments, breakups, bills, aging parents, health scares. But the principle remains the same. Between what happens and how we respond, there is a space. And in that space, something powerful forms. Not magic, not instant manifestation, but direction. I used to chase external change, new environments, new people, new projects. I thought if I rearranged the outside, the inside would follow. Sometimes it helped, often it didn't, because if your internal lens stays the same, you will repaint every room in the same color. Abraham Lincoln lost multiple elections before becoming president. He faced public humiliation, business failures, deep depression. There were years when nothing seemed to move in his favor. If he had decided, somewhere in the middle of that struggle, that failure defined him, history would look different. But he interpreted hardship as preparation, not condemnation. That interpretation shaped his persistence, and that persistence shaped the future. It's easy to admire stories like that from a distance. It's harder to apply them on a Tuesday afternoon when you feel invisible at work, or when someone you care about pulls away, or when you look in the mirror and feel time moving faster than you expected. That's when the mind quietly decides what this moment means, and meaning becomes momentum. I started paying attention to my own patterns. When something went wrong, did I default to self-blame? When something went right, did I downplay it? When someone complimented me, did I accept it or deflect it? When I felt anxious, did I assume something bad was coming, or that I simply cared? Our inner dialogue is not just commentary. It is construction. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, but wrote daily reminders to himself about patience, humility, and perspective. not because he lacked power, but because he understood the real battle was internal. And I think that's the part modern culture overlooks. We talk about attraction, success, mindset, but rarely about responsibility, not blame. Responsibility. The responsibility to notice what we are rehearsing in our own minds, because repetition becomes identity, and identity influences behavior, and behavior influences outcome. When I started shifting small internal assumptions, not overnight positivity, but quiet adjustments, things changed in subtle ways. Instead of thinking, "This always happens to me," I started asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" Instead of thinking, "I'm behind," I asked, "Behind who?" Instead of thinking, "I can't handle this," I asked, "Have I handled worse before?" Those questions didn't erase problems. They changed my posture toward them. And posture matters. People can sense it. Opportunities respond to it. Conversations shift because of it. It's not mystical. It's behavioral. If you expect rejection, you speak defensively. If you expect growth, you speak curiously. If you expect betrayal, you guard. If you expect possibility, you explore. And slowly, life begins to mirror the lens through which you see it. Not perfectly, not instantly, but consistently. I think about how many times I've blamed circumstances for patterns that were, in truth, internal. Same type of conflict, same type of disappointment, different faces, same outcome. At some point, the honest question becomes unavoidable. Is this really the world? Or is this the filter I keep applying to it? There's a quiet courage in examining your own assumptions. It's easier to say the world is unfair, harder to ask, what am I reinforcing? And this isn't about toxic positivity. Some things are genuinely painful. Some losses are permanent. Some injustices are real. But even in those moments, the internal story determines whether pain becomes bitterness or depth. I've seen people go through heartbreak and become closed off. I've seen others go through heartbreak and become more compassionate. Same event, different interpretation, different future. So when someone says, everything that comes to you is invited by your mind, I don't hear superstition anymore. I hear accountability. What am I tolerating? What am I rehearsing? What am I expecting? What am I repeatedly telling myself about who I am and what is possible? Because over time, those answers quietly draw the boundaries of my life. And maybe that's the real shift. Not trying to control the universe, not trying to predict fate, but learning to observe the invisible patterns shaping your choices, to pause before labeling a setback as identity, to question whether your fear is evidence or imagination, to realize that your mind is not a passive narrator, it is an architect, and the structures it builds may not be visible at first, but they determine where you feel comfortable, what you pursue, and what you walk away from. I still have anxious days. I still overthink. I still doubt myself more than I admit. But now, when those thoughts show up, I don't automatically believe them. I ask, is this a fact or a habit? And that question alone has changed more in my life than any external upgrade ever did. Maybe the world is not something we attract in a mystical sense. Maybe it's something we align with in a practical one. If you consistently prepare, you notice opportunity. If you consistently resent, you notice injustice. If you consistently grow, you notice lessons. The world hasn't changed. Your awareness has. And awareness shifts behavior. Behavior shifts direction. Direction shifts destiny. Not in dramatic leaps, but in quiet, compounding decisions. So if you've been feeling stuck lately, maybe the first place to look isn't outside. Maybe it's the quiet script running in the background. Not to judge it, not to shame yourself, just to notice it. Because once you notice it, you can edit it. And editing the story may be the most powerful form of change available to us. Not overnight, not all at once, but consistently. And maybe that's enough. If any part of this resonated with you, it probably means you're already paying attention, and that alone is a powerful beginning. Thank you for listening. Take care of your mind. It's shaping more than you realize.